On the buzz meter this Sunday, from the crisis along the Texas border to the fighting in Iraq and Gaza and the plane shot down in Ukraine, are the media providing a fair picture or a distorted one? We'll ask John McCain.
I think the media, in many respects, particularly when I read some of the, quote, commentators' columns, they continue to apologize and justify what is clearly a failed national security policy on this administration.
The Arizona senator on the coverage of the chaos, whether the press is soft on President Obama and why he's sometimes portrayed as a grumpy old man, plus what he really thinks of Jon Stewart. The horrifying shoot-down of that Malaysian jet. Have the media been too quick to speculate about Russia's role before the facts are in? And are some pundits rushing to blame Obama? A New Jersey reporter is forced out of his job after speaking out in a cop killer case about crime in the black community.
We decided to air it because it's important to shine a light on this anti-cop mentality that has so contaminated America's inner cities. Unfortunately, no one in the news media has the courage to touch that subject.
Was Sean Bergen punished for breaking the rules of journalism or for telling an uncomfortable truth? Plus, Rupert Murdoch and 21st Century Fox make a blockbuster bid to buy Time Warner. What's behind the takeover move? What would happen to CNN? And how would this transform the media landscape? I'm Howard Kurtz, and this is Media Buzz. From the moment Malaysia Flight 17 was shot down over Ukraine, the media were in wall-to-wall mode, with some journalists speculating about Russia's possible role, others urging caution, and one just being duped.
I would say, as a war correspondent and weighing all of the facts as they've been coming in, admittedly, this is my opinion. I believe that Vladimir Putin has the blood of these airline passengers on his hands.
We should point out that a number of news networks have been airing some footage of what appears to be smoke rising on a horizon, apparently, reportedly, from a plane crash. We cannot independently confirm that that is actually a plane crash from the Malaysian jet that we are referring to. It is possible it's something that occurred earlier in the day.
Well, I was looking out the window and I saw a projectile flying through the sky, and it would appear that the plane was shot down by a blast of wind from Howard Stern.
So it would appear that the plane was shot down. Can you tell us anything more from your military training?
Plenty of news outlets, including the wire services, reported that there appeared to be Americans on board.
There are reports that 23 Americans were on board. That's according to the manifest.
We believe 23 Americans, according to what we're hearing.
There may have been as many as 23 U.S. citizens on board.
That was false. Just one American, it turns out, was on the plane. And some conservative commentators soon turned to President Obama's schedule and whether he appeared to be publicly engaged with the downing of the plane and, on the same day, the Israeli invasion of Gaza.
Here we have our closest ally involved in a ground invasion. We have 300 people shot out of the sky, likely by one of our biggest enemies. You know, and the president's raising money.
Instead of running around lower Manhattan raising money for Democrats, the president should get on national television and call Vladimir Putin a killer. He should isolate him diplomatically and put him back in the black hole from which he came.
Joining us now to examine the coverage of this tragedy, Fox News contributors Lauren Ashburn, who hosts Social Buzz at foxnews.com, Jim Pinkerton, contributing editor at American Conservative Magazine, and Juan Williams, columnist for The Hill. Everyone scrambles when there's a major international tragedy. What has struck you about the coverage? You have Geraldo accusing Putin of being a murderer. You know, soon after the news breaks, you have Crystal Ball at MSNBC.
Getting punked by Howard Stern's person, whoever that was. In the beginning, I think that the network coverage was very appropriate. They expanded to 1-hour specials. You had wall-to-wall coverage on cable news. But the problem comes when they don't know more information and everybody's vamping, and that's when the mistakes are made, as we saw.
Washington Post this morning, Jim Pinkerton says a U.S. official believes that the U.S. believes Russia supplied this missile launcher to these pro-Russian separatists. Obviously, the Russians bear some responsibility here, but all this finger-pointing in the media, what happened to waiting for the facts?
Well, I think in this case, people the facts are so obvious and clear that people look for opinion and judgment. I think Geraldo Rivera was right. I think the Russians are responsible. And I think Samantha Power has said so. She's the UN ambassador. President Obama has basically said so. I think that in this case, the circumstantial evidence is so overwhelming that the Russians were involved either pushing the button or helping the separatists push the button, that the media are simply sort of catching up with reality. There were mistakes made about the number of Americans killed, but on the whole, I think the media got this one right.
Don't we live in a culture, though, one where there's kind of a demand for immediate answers, even when the answers, as with the case of how many Americans were on board, are simply not clear?
I agree with Jim that Geraldo was right. Now I can say that, based on the circumstance. But, in the immediate moments when this thing is breaking...
When he said that, it wasn't even confirmed there had been a missing.
That's what troubles me. It's the speculation. It's the 23 Americans. We know now they're not 23, but that became gospel within that day. It was gospel. There were 23 Americans on board. And then that led to questions about the foreign policy implications and what the United States should be doing in the name of protecting our citizens.
Right, but Geraldo was on an opinion show, the Outnumbers an opinion show, and he said, this is my opinion. So
he certainly did.
He wasn't like he said it's a fact. He says my opinion.
Okay. Some aspects of this remain shrouded in ambiguity. There's video which we can put up of some people carrying off the black box or what appeared to be the black box from the plane, but we don't know who they are. But at the same time, while this was clearly terrorism, it's eerily reminiscent, isn't it, of the Malaysian plane of 4 months ago, which disappeared, and then there were weeks and weeks of speculation about did we find the debris and what caused it, and was it the pilot?
Experts. I mean, how many times do we have to hear from the same aviation experts that black boxes are important to finding out exactly what happened? I feel like we just get into this mindset where we have to fill the time, and over again we turn to the same people to tell us the same things about all of these airline tragedies.
But what is it, since it's such a big story, 298 people dead, international repercussions, what is the problem with going very heavy on this? You feel like other things are being
I do, of course.
minimized.
Do we still have an immigration problem in this country?
Last time I checked.
Right, because you wouldn't know it based on the coverage. The coverage from the very beginning is appropriate. People are saddened and want to know what happened, but when you don't have information, why don't we cover other things that are still important to Americans, like immigration?
Well, I think one story that could get covered on this shoot-down story is the president's travel schedule. I can remember very well when President Reagan or President Bush 43 was seeming to be on vacation or doing something small at the time of a great event, and the media pounded on him. I think it's taken a few days for the media to catch up on President Obama, but the New York Times today, sticking to his travel plans at risk of looking bad, Obama maintains schedule despite world crises. This is the New York Times finally realizing the optics of a president doing fundraisers like Benghazi, like Texas. It's starting to hurt.
But that kind of criticism, Juan, and we played a little bit of at the top, you see a lot of that from conservatives almost no matter what the crisis is. President's playing golf, president's going to fundraiser, president's shooting pool. This is all about the optics. And this, the same thing was said about George W. Bush, who's spending too much time at his Crawford Ranch. But do you think that the media are too obsessed with the optics as opposed to what is actually being done to solve these problems or respond to international crises?
Well, in fact, that came up for me this week here at Fox. I said, if you're asking me, is the man engaged? Do I believe that this president is paying attention to foreign policy issues? I think he did issue the sanctions on Russia just the day before. Mm-hmm. He was in consultation with his top aides, including the CIA director, at the time that he was going up to the New York fundraiser. And I would add that, if you look back historically, something like George W. Bush, right after the Madrid bombing, 200 people dead, he went to a fundraiser in L.A. But we are in such polarized times now, and I think there is such an instinct to jump on President Obama.
So you're saying it's partisan?
Of course it's partisan.
But there is an issue, and Julie Pace said this earlier on Fox. She said that there is an issue the other way with the optics, and that if you are the president and you don't continue your schedule as normal, then it looks like these things are blown out of proportion. I'm not saying I agree with that strategy, but that is how the White House is looking at it.
But the problem is that we've seen a president as mainstream media outlets like Politico have been pointing out, a very disengaged president, a lot more interested in doing fundraisers and so on. So, for example, when we see on the front page of the Washington Post today, aides were warned of border crisis. You've got to ask, where was the president over the last year or two as this issue in El Salvador and Central America was bubbling up?
But I think that's perfectly legitimate to ask why the president and his administration didn't anticipate the VA crisis, seemed to be slow on the IRS emails, and all of these other things have happened. But when you get into to, like, gee, should the guy play golf? I know a lot of people are outraged by that, but he is president 24/7.
Well, President Bush dealt with this and never played golf after the Iraq War started. He made a choice. He said, I accept the judgment of the American people that the optics of me playing golf while Americans are getting killed in Iraq are poor, so he didn't do it.
I think it's playing to partisanship in a sense. You know what? We're all human beings, and I think we have a better president whenever that president takes a moment to go with his family or play golf or do something normal, as opposed to somehow being obsessed and, you know, looking like, as Lauren was saying, the world's ending, the world's ending.
Right. Let me switch now to the immigration crisis, which we all agree also needs attention. This week, Jose Vargas, former Washington Post reporter, illegal immigrant, a guy who's founded an organization to be an advocate for illegal immigrants, went to the Texas border, got detained, and later ended up being released. Let me play a little sound from Vargas on CNN a few weeks ago.
America is not a country that turns its back on children. That's not who we are as a country. You know, and I don't want to bring race into this, but if these were white kids, would we be doing these to the kids, right?
This guy has an ulterior motive for doing this. You know, he's on television. He will most likely write a book about this and include this in it. And he's selfish. He is selfish to go down to that border and pull off a stunt like that when the Border Patrol people have enough to worry about. He's also thumbing his nose at American law. This guy broke the law.
Well, he was brought here at the age of 12 from the Philippines. He has sort of come out of the closet. He did that in the New York Times Magazine in 2011. And he certainly is very good at getting attention. Do you think the mainstream media treat Jose Vargas as something of a hero?
Of course they treat him as a hero. Lauren's absolutely right. And he's milking it for a book contract and a movie deal and God knows what else he'll have. But meanwhile, stories like, you know, John Winter at Fox has a headline this morning of cartels shooting heavy caliber machine guns across the border into America, aiming at American officials. That story will get one scintilla of the coverage of the Vargas story.
If the Border Patrol had not only detained Jose Vargas, but had decided to deport him because he obviously has broken the law, do you think that would have been an outrage? Would the media have denounced the administration for that?
They would have seen it as, and I think this is the reason he wasn't deported, is the administration made a decision that it was just too politically explosive at this moment. We got, you know, the children at the border. We've got the larger argument about comprehensive immigration reform. Vargas now, I think, is the stand-in for all the 12 million illegal immigrants in the country. He's the best-known illegal immigrant in America, and so he has that status. I must say that I interviewed him on stage when he made his documentary, and that documentary is going to be aired on HBO. It is a big media sensation. He's no doubt a hero to the American media and especially to the American left.
Yeah, I've interviewed him as well, and he's a nice guy and was a good reporter, but he is such an advocate now. But I think, taking your point, he is the safest illegal immigrant in America because the administration is not going to want to have the storm of criticism that would surround his deportation. All right, let me get a break here. Send me a tweet about our show. It's at Howard Kurtz. As you know, we always read the best ones at the end of the program. Ahead, John McCain makes his Media Buzz debut, talking about the president's coverage, wacko birds, and even Jon Stewart. But first, the New Jersey TV reporter who spoke out about black crime and the hatred of police. Should he have lost his job?